Hi, everybody, and welcome to this week's Creative Pathways Talk with Anthony Abernathy. Anthony is the Senior Brand Marketing Director for Nike, and he's currently leading Nike basketball globally. He's been a 15-year veteran at Nike, and he's led several digital marketing and brand marketing campaigns, including basketball training, football, and the Jordan brand. He's had the opportunity to lead amazing athlete and team campaigns for icons like LeBron James, Kobe Bryant, Kevin Durant, Michael Jordan, the University of Michigan, Oklahoma, and North Carolina. Anthony actually has a bachelor's in computer science from Florida A&M University and MSI in human interaction from the University of Michigan. So let's talk to Anthony and figure out how he got there and what it's really like being a brand director at Nike. Hi, Anthony. How's it going?
Hey, Tan. Awesome, man. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I mean, we're really glad to have you too. It's gonna be a lot that we're gonna be able to talk about, and so I guess we'll start with what is your senior brand marketing director position at Nike mean? What do you actually do day by day?
Yeah, it's being a senior brand marketing director is amazing. Working at Nike now in 15 years of being at Nike has been just a kind of a dream job because you wake up every day and you get the opportunity to serve the youth, right? So our sweet spot and our target demographic is typically middle school and high school, male and female, and my job is to make sure that we are bringing the best experiences, the best innovation and product, as well as ways in which you connect with the brand. And that's digital, that's also physical retail, events, experiences on the ground to the entire world. So that's not just North America and US focus, that's everywhere: Europe, Africa, Asia, Greater China. Down in the Philippines. So you name it. It's our job just to make sure that kids around the world are able to connect with Nike, and what we share is this bond known as basketball. This amazing sport.
Yeah, I love that, and I appreciate that you're focusing on the younger generation because that's kind of what can change the rest of the generations coming forward. Because that's just pretty much where things grow up from.
Right.
And so, yeah, to start out with, you do have a bachelor's in computer science. What was your educational background like, and how did that bring you to the advertising world?
Yeah, it's a unique journey, and I think that's the beauty of just kind of you can have one plan, but sometimes those plans can easily shift, or they can morph and evolve into new careers and new opportunities that you didn't even know existed. And for a lot of people, regardless of what age you are, if you're kind of in college or you're in high school or middle school, there's a good chance that by the time you do graduate, there's going to be a plethora of new jobs that are going to emerge. So just continue to make sure that you can position yourselves to be agile, flexible, and being able to find your niche with, it's going to be the key. So we're always learning, we're always evolving. And it's no different than my journey. So I started in computer science. My ambition was to create video games when I was growing up, and so that's when I started studying different ways to code, and being a minority, there weren't too many people that look like me in these computer classes learning C++ and Java and Python and what you name it. But I had a passion because I love playing video games, and now being the having the ability to storytell and create for others and myself was something that really was the appeal to explore computer science. And then from there, when I graduated, and I learned a little bit more around you could take computer science and do so many different things with it. And especially the world was starting to move further along in regards to making digital an integral part of everybody's lives, not just from an entertainment standpoint, but just, whether it's education or whether it was retail or whether it's in the medical field. It just felt like I was in a good spot. But I decided to go and pursue, a master's degree in human computer interaction at Michigan, which was a little bit different because with computer science is more focusing primarily on kind of the back end and
Yeah.
creating the proper logic on how things need to work. Where Going to Michigan was now my opportunity to understand kind of the front end, the usability side of it, the user experience, and really starting to understand how your user or your consumer, depending on where you are, actually how they interact with things, right? So you study behavior, you study color schemes, you study how you position, things on a page, right? And so I got to learn that from not only just creating video games or creating software, but also now, with the explosion of websites, trying to build the most interactive, engaging website and knowing what to put the placement of the things that you value and that you believe that are important that you want your users to be able to consume and interact with. So it was an amazing journey there. And both of those have kind of set me up with this opportunity to intern at Nike. So in 2003, I just completed my first year of, my schooling and my master's at Michigan and got the opportunity to come out to Nike. And that's when I began to learn about digital marketing, because digital marketing was still in its early infancy stages. And so being able to now do storytelling around the sports that I love, the athletes that I looked up to, and also be able to use it as a tool to help not only inspire, but also provide the proper instructions and tips and tools on how athletes can improve. I fell in love with it immediately, and I wanted to make sure that I found a way to get a full-time position at Nike. It took a second because when I went back to University of Michigan, it didn't happen right away. So I finished my degree. I actually went and worked at QVC, so the home shopping network. And I went over there, and that was a great time too. I got to work for another great brand that focuses on providing the best product to their loyal user base, right? And so I did that for about a year, and then got the opportunity to return out here to Beaverton, Oregon, and work at Nike, and was a digital specialist and a digital manager working on U.S. football and then basketball and even got to do some sportswear. So you name it, I've been fortunate enough to work on some really cool categories and be able to work alongside amazing, brilliant other marketers and just amazing athletes.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, you definitely just said a lot of great things just now. And to bring it back real quick, you said like in the beginning, you don't quite know what you don't know when you're in college and getting your education. You don't know all the possibilities of where you could go. And just like that, like I just heard about this human brand interaction for the first time. And so do you have any advice to students that are kind of in that middle period that are planning on pursuing a path, but how can they peek into other parts of just the world and possibilities that they could actually end up in?
Yeah, it's fascinating because there's so many things that are emerging. I'll give you an example. So I'm fortunate enough to be on the kind of external advisory board at Michigan for the program that I graduated from, which is the School of Information, right? And honestly, I didn't know anything about it, when I was still an undergraduate at Florida A&M. But there's new programs that are emerging every day, and if there are things that you're passionate about or love to spend time doing, like figure out how you can, be a part of that, right? Whether that's on the front line of it or behind the scenes. And so I'll give you an example. I learned last week that, Michigan got an endowment to now create a program around esports, which is fascinating, right? And it wasn't necessarily focused on trying to create the next esport gamer. It's really around helping people understand all of the intricacies that make up esports, from learning how to create what that game is going to be, to the marketing behind it, to how to put on things like you're having here, where we're on StreamYard and streaming live for other people to see, and trying to attract people to come and watch and engage with these gaming technologies. There's just so many different components that make up a lot of the experiences or services that we are fortunate enough to receive each and every day. So it's more of just taking the time to explore, go under the hood and see, what are all the parts that put these cool productions and these cool activities or products together. And I guarantee that you'll find something that piques your interest, and then that allow you to kind of dive deeper and learn how you could possibly have that position.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice, and kind of just look in places and see what exists so that you can go at it. And so, yeah, you said you started at Nike as an intern, and that has turned into a 15-year long career. So, how did that transition happen for you? Was it mostly networking? Did you develop a lot of competency type skills, or did it just sort of happen naturally?
I mean, all of the above. Like my internship wasn't necessarily at the time just amazing, right? I was kind of sitting around waiting for work to kind of come my way. I think things have changed and programs have gotten better in making sure that if people have an internship, they have something to do. But I also would recommend anyone with an internship to try to be proactive. To try to find work that you can do and contribute to. I think a lot of times, unfortunately, just being fully transparent, summer times are really a time when a lot of the workforce is trying to break away, enjoy vacation, getting time with family, and then you're this intern that's like, hey, I got 8 to 10 weeks. I need to make a name for myself, when their mindset might be a little bit different than yours. And so it's just continue to soak up, be a sponge, share ideas. I think, what I loved about the culture of Nike is that if you have an idea, they're willing to listen. So, take the time, come up with some ideas of what you think the company should be doing. And whether or not that gets adopted and implemented, it begins to show how you think, right? And that's what they're really evaluating is, what you can contribute. How do you think? So you should definitely do that, part one. I think the other way that helps is networking, right? So when you network, you're the one that's asking the questions versus somebody asking the questions to you, right? And I think that's going to help you begin to understand what you believe the company needs and how you can fit those needs for the company. Or you can also start to create ideas that you think the company should explore based on the information that you gathered. So, I always say, hey, if you don't have an internship where there's a ton of projects just waiting for you, go make the project. And the project could just be simply networking, doing informational interviews. And that was the gist of my internship. And so when I was able to return to campus, I already had a good number of relationships that helped me get into the company because they had references. But also now that I had to go get work done, I knew that I can pick up the phone or I can go see somebody, ask, and they will point me in the right direction as to who I should link up with to get needed.
Yeah, and it comes back to that similar concept of just making yourself invaluable, and the way you think, like you said, like how you think is more important than what you've done in the past, because that will show what you have the potential for in the future. And in the same way, it's with your human brand management degree, that's just pretty much how people think. And so you're kind of an expert in that sort of interaction between digital and people. And so can you talk more about how that influences how you see your work nowadays and what that is like?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, and it's something that I pride myself in, is really trying to understand the consumer, right? Like, we're here to serve the consumer, and so if you don't understand the consumer and you're trying to offer up things that doesn't really appeal to them, then you're not going to create that deep connection that you truly want and you truly need for the sake of your business. And so everything has to be consumer centric from the beginning. And a lot of times, the relationship that you want to build is just like me and you having a conversation and me and you trying to build a rapport. It's my job to make sure that I begin to understand your interests, your likes, your dislikes. And sometimes that's through communication. Sometimes it's just through observing you, right? And then from there, being able to go a little bit deeper, right? And continue to make sure that we can get to a space where we truly know each other, and we can sometimes anticipate what the other individual wants. That's when you've hit that utopia of a relationship. But that's also going to evolve. You know, you can easily change your peaks, your interests, your habits at a moment's notice. And so it's my job to continue to stay interested, to stay curious, and then from there being able to still continue to offer up what's going to be beneficial to you and vice versa, right? And so that's just being a human, right? And I think sometimes when we're working, we forget about just the human qualities, the human traits, the human principles, right? Of humanity that are needed and that should be applied now to whatever you're doing in marketing, whatever product you're selling or experience that you're selling. Starts with just being a human first and understanding humans to help inform the work that you want to deliver.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, that definitely may be coming from your background, because I know for me, like I've taken a few marketing classes, and it's very brand focused, like the mission values and stuff like that. And I mean, there's definitely a reason that that exists, but it can leave you in a box and forget that these are humans that you are trying to speak to at the end of the day. And yeah, so it's
Absolutely.
kind of a workflow with that. And I would like to learn more about your actual position nowadays. Like, what's your workflow with your team? What does senior brand marketing and management really mean for what you do day by day?
Yeah, so my job right now is really to focus on strategy. Where are we going in the next couple of years? So I look at we break down um, our workflow based on seasons, and so
Mhm.
there's where right now we would say May is typically a summer for us at Nike. So we call it summer, where your traditional summer is fall, and then holiday is like October to the end of the calendar year, and spring is like January till about to the end of March. And so my job is not to be thinking about where we are in 2021, right? I'm already thinking about, okay, hey, where are we going in spring 22? We're, holiday 22, spring 23. And some of that is more of understanding where we want to take the consumer, and some of it is just overarching strategically of how we want to work as a company, because we have so many different great partner functions and departments, but we all have to be laddering up to what is our vision, and what is our roadmap for the next couple of seasons. And so my team underneath me is amazing. I've got great directors, great managers, great specialists across brand, digital, PR, as well as partners that work in our key cities like New York, LA, Chicago, Shanghai, Milan, Philip. Important to the basketball group as well. So it's our job to be the quarterback, right? So we are responsible from the planning phase all the way to the execution phase of providing our teammates in these functions with the right, what we call assets. So the right content, the right photography, the right videos, that they can go out now and connect with their consumers within their respective markets or respective channels, right? And so we work with them and we serve them. Like they know their consumers, so they look to us as kind of the creative resources to go and produce what they need to go and do their job. So that's what my team is responsible for. I allow them to kind of do a lot of the work. So as a senior director, my job is to kind of be more hands off, and it's hard because you work in a company where this projects are so exciting. Like you want to
Yeah.
get into the weeds and do the work, but you have a team of talented people that you need to trust. You need to cheer for. You need to empower. And you need to inspire them to go out and do the work that they're capable of doing. So that's my job, and my job is to kind of provide clarity and structure for them so that they know what's required of them each and every day. So strategies shift a lot of times, and so it's one of those challenges of helping them understand why we're going in this direction, and for them to kind of buy into it, but still be able to create amazing experiences and product inspiration for our consumers that ladders into the overall vision of the company.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a good, cool thing to see. And so, yeah, just like you said, you liked being hands on, but now it's hard to be hands off. Was there a time when you were more in the nitty gritty part of making the assets and working on that stuff? And do you have any advice for people that are in there and maybe want to move up to an administrative position? What are the kind of the realities of that back and forth and deciding for yourself that it was the right move for you to move into a more administrative role?
Yeah, it's a challenge because there's different ways to lead, right? And depending on kind of how you tick, a lot of people want to be hands on. They want to build. They want to feel like they're in control, right? And so that's one way to lead, is leading with your hands and being that individual who takes action or wants the ball in their hand. And then there's kind of that coach, right? That's no longer necessarily on the court, who has the ball in their hands, but is able to kind of see things, observe things, and help that individual with the ball still be successful, right? And be their biggest cheerleader and be their biggest advocate and advisor. And that requires just trusting who you bring on, right? And sometimes that individual may not be wired the same way you are. And that there's nothing wrong with that. You need to have diverse thinking. You need to have diverse backgrounds in order to create the best product, right? Or the best experience, depending on what your job entails and what your service you provide. So I would tell people, like, you want to put that same sort of effort that you put into creating things or doing your job and being hands-on, into now being that advisor, being that strategy individual, being that coach for these young men and young women, right? That's what a leader is responsible for. And you're going to be the one that takes the blame, and sometimes you're the one that gets the glory. But you want to make sure that if you get that glory, that you give credit to the team that's really put in the work and the hustle and the long hours and being flexible and nimble to the constant changes that take place. That's just part of the job. So I still have that itch every now and again to want to dip my hands into it. But I think, my advice to those individuals is to also just find a project that you can still kind of own, right? Because, most jobs, there's not enough people to get after all the initiatives that the company wants to accomplish. And so you can find one and at least start it. And then if it gets to a place where the company's ready to adopt it and you need more resources or headcount, then you can offer it up to your teammates to keep running with the baton.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned a little bit earlier that it's having your team adopt the mission and the vision that you all want, because then that's the best way to inspire that hard work that they're going to do, instead of telling them what to do when to do it. And I think that's a great way of looking at it, because it's more of a, we're all working together and you're sort of being the glue and making sure that everyone is taken care of and doing the right things. And yeah, that's cool to hear from someone that's more on this leadership position. And so, yeah, you mentioned, yeah, that you look really far into the future when you plan your brand strategy and things like that. And so, looking backwards, I know that you've had digital marketing in the past and you were maybe ahead of your time with one of your projects, which was the Nike basketball campaign. And do you want to talk about that a little bit before I throw
Yeah,
on video for it?
yeah. You talking about Ballers Network, and so yeah. So what year was that, man? It was a long time ago. I think it was before 2010. Facebook was continuing to make a name for itself in regards to having people not only become members, but the amount of engagement and amount of content that was being generated by users in that space had us thinking about how could we use social media as a way to connect basketball enthusiasts and people that want to play, because, you know, Nike, we're all about movement. We want people to play and engage in sport. And so we came up with this idea called the Ballers Network, which was going to be at the time a social network within a social network of Facebook, because Facebook was allowing you to build apps at the time. And so, you know, there were some successful apps that were more kind of in the gaming realm, but we were coming in there as using this way of connection to allow people to find courts, basically reserve a court or reserve the opportunity to play on that court and bring friends, right? Friends that are either your true friends or friends that you're meeting on through digital means to now come together to play sport, and particularly basketball. And so it was a lofty goal to try to now be able to go out and identify all the courts that exist. When you think about just in New York in general, the New York City metropolitan area, I think there was like somewhere along the lines of 500 to 600 courts, right? And so we're trying to find courts in everywhere, you know, whether it was highly dense populated cities to rural, you know, locations, not only just in the US, but everywhere, with the hopes of now you can come on there and basically create your own version of what is now known as like Evite, right? And invite people to play a game at a certain time. So we were ahead of our time. I think, you know, people were still trying to understand, like, why would I do that? Basketball is one of those things where it's just kind of you walk up or walk in, and who's ever there, you play with who's there, or you use your, you know, mobile phone or things like that to invite people to come hoop, versus now I'm going to schedule it and make it a formal basketball pickup opportunity. But, you know, nowadays I hear people calling me left and right about it, where they meet a young man or young woman who has an idea to do something similar, and they always say, you know, Anthony, you guys were ahead of your time. We just didn't understand it. And so, you know, with this appetite to bring back Ballers Network, just because we were onto something really big, it's just we were too early for people to truly understand the magnitude of how people will start to interact with social to make it a part of their daily lives, including sport.
Yeah, and it's really cool that you did so much like globally and searching out courts and stuff like that. And like you said, it's a lot about timing, and we'll talk about it in a little bit. I'm gonna show the video just so everyone can get an idea about the Ballers Network, and we're talking about it.
To help players everywhere get in the game, meet and challenge other players at every skill level, anywhere in the world, Nike created Ballers Network. Nike wanted to create a breakthrough application that harnessed the social networking power of Facebook to make it easy for players to stay connected to the game, their teammates, and the competition 24/7. To get started, just add the application to your Facebook profile. Then you can invite friends to join in. Once you're connected, you can immediately see what's happening all over the network, all around the world. Check out what your friends are up to, or meet the newest members in the toughest competition. Next, you can either find games and courts near you, or start from scratch and create your own. And you can go way beyond just playing pickup games by creating a league, inviting teams to join, and setting the schedule for your season. And when the season is done, you can organize a tournament to decide the champion. You can trash talk before the game and pick a team MVP after, either on your computer or your mobile phone. And because it's always on, players can find courts and games any place, send and receive invites anytime, or check their profile to get their schedule and messages. The more you play, the more your profile page becomes a recruiting tool. Every player's wins and losses are logged there, as well as their photos, awards, and the comments other players made about their game. With Ballers Network, Nike has created the first ever basketball application in Facebook that connects with mobile phones. So when coaches are looking for new talent to fill out their squad, they can search the profiles in their area and find the best baller for the job. And it's helping coaches and organizers manage their school, city, and college intramural teams and leagues. It's redefining the way a brand communicates with its audience and is uniting the world around one game and one love. Who got next?
Yeah, and I think it's so cool that it's very clear that, like you said, you looked into the future and then you did anticipate this new rise of digital marketing way back then. And so what did you learn from not getting the timing quite right, and how do you use that to move forward and look at the future of digital marketing?
I think you understand that most likely that behavior will come. It's just you were in the early stages, and you were trying to figure out the need for early adopters. I think one of the biggest learnings was, and you saw in the features and the functionality, like we covered it all. It wasn't just around pickup games. It was the ability to talk trash, the ability to invite. It was the ability to create leagues, the ability to create tournaments, like all of the different ways in which people interact with the game, whether you are doing it through a formal way, or just guys who want to get together and put a league together in their own backyard. We try to look at all the possible user experiences and kind of path them out and make sure that we can build against those. So it was ready. I think it was more of just the marketing. You can't just build a tool. You got to now really get early adopters who can be marketers, who can be influencers to kind of drive that. And as you're showing a video, you can see a little bit of kind of the timestamp of when this tool was introduced. It was introduced in 2009. We weren't really talking about influencer marketing at that time, right? Where now influencer marketing is the thing. And so, imagine now if you had key influencers who were able to, share that they're going to play here, or, come hoop with this celebrity, or come hoop with this athlete, right? Then you may have a different draw of people wanting to come there. But you also had to get really sharp on who did you want to sell this to. I think where we struggled, just being honest with you, was we were looking at an individual who wanted to do this initially, and we just felt like that was going to be really hard. So we went a different route. We tried to go to actually intramural leagues. So we started going to colleges and universities, asking them if they'd be willing to try this out. And there were a handful of tools that were out there already that some schools were using, but a lot of schools just weren't well versed in digital yet to move away from the analog version of hosting tournaments and leagues. And so you take those learnings, and when the time is right, you're able to apply them in a new way. And so that's where you see a lot of these social networks where there are people who kind of were ahead of their time, or what you would say they fell fast, that they were able to take those learnings, and now with some of the new behaviors and advanced functionality, you're still able to take advantage of the core principle and take those learnings now and make sure that you don't make the same mistakes.
Yeah, that's great. And you said the fail fast, and I love that, because it's that sort of process of have an idea, and I just have to test everything, because that's just how this works. And so with all of that, do you have any sort of idea about the future of the advertising and marketing industry, where you're moving, or I guess any skills that new people trying to enter this industry can sort of develop so that they can be proactive and instead of reactive when entering?
Yeah, no doubt. I think the future is really connected to the understanding of where the individual is more empowered to create and own their content and own their brands more than ever before. Coming up in my generation, there were a handful of brands that kind of controlled the airwaves. They provided you with how you needed to think, what you need to buy, how you need to experience certain. Now, in this day and age, thanks to social media, thanks to the proliferation of these digital phones and the power that you now hold, you can broadcast, you can create, you can be your own brand. And a lot of the young people today are really around building their own brands. And so to me, if you want to have success, as companies and corporations, you need to now be the platform, or empower people to come together, or empower people to be able to share and express and do what they want to do. Because that's the new way. Even some of our athletes, you see all the work that LeBron James is doing, and he's just one. I think they hold him up to be kind of the standard of what the new athlete is in regards to marketing. But the goal now is you as a company, you need to empower people. You need to give them the keys and the control and the reign, and be able to help them push what they want the future to be. Otherwise, you're going to get left behind because you no longer can own it by yourself. So co-ownership is really important, and being a marketer that allows co-creation and co-production to take place is going to take you a long way.
Yeah, that's great advice, and not something that I hadn't quite heard before. And yeah, definitely the good place to start looking. And so we're gonna move into Q&A. So if anyone in the audience, go ahead and drop your questions. But before that, I wanted to ask, when you were in the sort of lower positions of a marketing company like this, where should your focus lie if you're trying to move up in the industry or even enter it? Like, which skills can you focus on right now that will help prepare you for the future in marketing?
Yeah, I think the first thing is the mentality of don't try to move so fast and get ahead of your journey. Focus in the now, right? Master what you're being tasked with today. Because if you do that, then you'll be nimble enough, flexible enough, and ready for whatever the next step or the next job is, right? And a lot of times we have our mind made up and we believe that this is the trajectory and the roadmap and the path that we need to go down. And our world gets really, shook when there are pivots. A lot of times organizations are changing. As young marketers or future marketers right now, you've seen with the pandemic that a lot of things have changed. Companies have laid people off. Companies have cut different strategies and divisions, trying to now adjust. Working from home and working and going to school remotely is now a thing that's not going to go away. So, you really want to focus in the now, but you also want to pay attention to what new technologies or new interfaces or new interactions are emerging, and study those, right? And study the behind the scenes, get into the depths of how things are being done. Like, I'll give an example of, cryptocurrency is a big thing. We talked about esport a little bit. But there's so many things that help, build and construct what these new phenomenons are, that you want to just start to really have a grasp on all the things that make up these new businesses or these new ways of living, and find a niche in there that works for you. So, but always communication is important too, being able to truly talk and get across your points. And then second is just continuing to understand your audience. Those are just the soft skills that are going to help you go a long way, regardless of, what field in marketing or any other industry that you want to explore.
Yeah, great. That's a great, good amount of list of things to start working on to be successful. And so we have a question here from Carl. With your Nike basketball work, did you get to work with Jimmy Smith? And if so, what was that like?
I didn't personally. I believe most likely maybe my colleagues did, and that's the big thing around Nike. We're just such a big group, right? And so we work with companies and agencies. Wyden is always known as kind of the bigger ones, but Shy Day, I would assume we work with them. My experience was more kind of coming up in digital marketing, working with social agencies, right? And some of these agencies, like we talked about a little bit earlier, 10, were just in their infancy stages as well. There was an individual who had a learning and a knowledge of social media that had to build his team on the fly, right? So, like a Shy Day and a Widen and some of these well-established companies were also trying to figure out now to make the pivot into social media because they were used to the traditional way of marketing. And so sometimes you go with the standard, industry or the standard agencies. And sometimes you look at an individual who has potential, who's going to go figure it out and start to build their social team from scratch. So you think of people like Laundry Service or Team Epiphany. These were just individuals who had an inkling for social media that now found like-minded individuals and really were problem solving on how they can help companies, big and small, now connect with this new behavior in social media. So, but no, I didn't get the opportunity to work with Jimmy Smith, but probably worked with him or partners of his in the industry over my 15-year career.
Cool. And so we have another question from Lily. What's your perspective on prioritizing organic versus paid marketing?
That's a tough question. So great question, Lily. My honest opinion is that you need both, right? And a lot of times, in order for you to have true organic marketing, you need to have consistent content, consistent experiences where people understand and can expect what you're going to deliver for them, right? And that's where really organic happens. I think paid sometimes is going to help you get the awareness that you need, whether that's starting off on this journey that you want people to go down with you, or it may just be a moment in time where you truly need to get something across and you need to pay for it. But there is that mix that's required. And unfortunately, with a lot of these algorithms on the platforms, you're going to have to do paid. You're going to have to spend paid to really cut through to get them to your channel. Then it's up to you to make sure that you have compelling content that's going to bring people back on a daily basis. And so you have to ask yourself the question of what makes consumers want to come to my page all the time, right? And we deal with this at Nike all the time. I always ask myself, okay, why would you come to my page versus sometimes even going to LeBron James' page? Because he may have a little bit more compelling content that's a little bit more diversified than maybe Nike, where we're just talking about product or maybe we're talking about sport. So it's up to you to figure out, what's your strategy against both and when to use each one. So, it really is a case by case basis in regards to what you need to prioritize. So those are the questions you need to ask yourself based on what that objective is for that particular project.
Cool. And it sounds like maybe like paid marketing is a little bit better at just reaching a wider audience and getting that quantity of an audience, but organically marketing is more of a quality thing and making sure that they stick with you and really understand what you're about.
Yeah, you gotta build a compelling channel, right? So you can get them there, that's great, but how do you keep them there? How do you keep them coming back and wanting to engage with what you're offering? I think media companies do it well. I think retail companies struggle. I think you see influencers, right? Influencers give you something that's going to be entertaining. And that's why a lot of people go to paying influencers to do this work. But they figured out a system of giving you something to consume and check out and look forward to on a regular basis. And so they've learned how to get you to stop in the feed, with your thumb and say, okay, I'm going to engage in this.
Yeah. And we have another question from Carl. Do you see many folks of color at Nike and your partner companies? And what's like diversity and inclusion like?
Hey, great question, Carl. So I'm fortunate enough to be part of, at least in the brand marketing department, we have a worldwide marketing team that's focused on diversity, inclusion, and equity, right? And so we are continuing to make sure that the BIPOC community is getting the opportunities not only to work within Nike, but also our partners, right? So you talked about Shy Day a little bit earlier. I mentioned Team Epiphany from a social standpoint. We're asking all of our agencies to stand up and make sure that we're creating the best diverse workforce that we can possibly have. We're also taking the initiative to make sure that we are hiring, whether it's Black owned or Hispanic led, and even Asian led agencies, right? And some of them may be more well established, others may be in their infancy stages, and they need a little bit more of guidance and a little bit more of a longer rope of patience to help them get up to the standard of Nike and other industries. But that's what it's going to take to get there. So today, are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. But there is a commitment and there is a desire, and now we're putting action behind our words to make sure that we can get there. And so it's a long way to go, and I think most companies are now understanding that it requires patience, but it also requires an investment and a commitment for the long haul. It's not something that's going to change overnight. And so there's also just the physical locations of certain companies, and also trying to now, with this need to work remotely, how do you balance that? Because everybody doesn't necessarily want to move to certain locations and be far away from family or friends, depending on where some of these companies are located. So it's really important that you take all those factors in and you try your best to create the best working environment that takes into consideration just people's different backgrounds, their ethnicities, and what they can bring to the table.
Great. And it's an important goal to get to.
Absolutely.
And so our last question here is from Cynthia. She's asking, what advice do you have to give our E4 youth team about networking and interviewing?
I think the best thing around networking is continuing to reach out to people. And a lot of times, honestly, it may be hard, especially if you're trying to do it through the means of social media like LinkedIn and whatnot, and you want people to become your friends. Sometimes you got to be able to provide people with some ideas of what you're thinking about. I'll give you a quick example where I was still trying to get back into Nike. I was an intern, and I would always just create ideas. I would say, hey, I think you guys should be doing this. And, I would build a deck, or I will build a presentation that explained and outlined a direction or a concept that I think they should consider. And sometimes, they actually took my ideas and they used it, and I didn't get credit for it. And that crushed me, right? I thought like, hey, they're still in my IP. That was my idea. But it does two things. It validates that you're thinking in the right space. But also it allows you now to start to have a rapport and continue to talk with individuals who now believe in you, that can show that you are on the right path of what they might be needing from a company standpoint. And it just opens up opportunities to interview with people, right? And like I said, there's two ways to handle an interview. There's either that individual's talking to you and asking questions and you're responding to it, or you're the one that's kind of initiating the questions because you truly want to know, right? And sometimes, and I haven't done multiple interviews, sometimes you look and you wonder if that person is just here just to be here, or that person truly wants to be here, has an interest, curious to learn more about that role. And they're the one that's driving now the conversation and the discussion, because they truly want to understand kind of what, this, me and you going back and forth, like you really want to understand how I think, my experience, my background. And now I'm willing to pour into that to help you and help these people on this particular stream to understand what it is that they need to further their careers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great way to talk about it. And yeah, look at just even day-to-day interactions. Like, do I actually want to know what can I learn from the people around me, period? And that's a really valuable way of looking at things.
Don't be afraid to share your ideas. Don't be afraid to share your thoughts. Sometimes we're so risk averse nowadays, right? And I heard a couple of months ago that just shook me to the core, where now even kids in sports are starting to consider the return of investment, the ROI on it, right? Like, and I was like, wow, that's crazy. You got to be a risk taker, right? And sometimes, it come back to burn you, but there'll be blessings and there'll be benefits down the line for it, right? And just everybody's got that innovative gene in them. They got ideas for days. So if one idea doesn't work, go to the next one and the next one after that. Like, just continue to have a bag of ideas that you're willing to share, because one idea that may not work, it may, like Ballers Network, for example, sometimes it's timing, sometimes it may need just a simple tweak here and there, and then it's ready to take off, right? And so the best innovation, a lot of the things that we're able to consume today and we think are kind of modern, marvels, are from people that just kept tinkering with it and kept trying and grasping new ideas to help modify what their big plan was or big idea was. So I think just continuing to have that gene in you is going to help you, regardless of where you go in your career in life.
Yeah, that's great. And to not have that hyper productive, like, oh, this isn't, I'm not on the right path right now. And just, it's like you said, staying with that genuine curiosity of yours, because that's what will really drive you at the end of the day, not your career or anything else. But and thanks so much for letting me pick your brain. This has been really great, and I've definitely learned a lot. Do you have anything else that you'd like to leave our audience with?
No, I just thank you guys for the opportunity. Like I said, I was once in your shoes and trying to figure out what was next for me. But I really believe that if you take the time, continue to reach out to people, show them who you are, who your personal brand is. And your brand is really your personality. Your brand is your values, your beliefs. Those are the things that stand out more than the ideas that you can bring to the table. That's the added bonus, right? So continue to just be first a human, right? And especially within this day and age with everything that's going on, being a human should be priority number one. Being kind, curious, caring, that's going to help you go a long way, regardless of whatever your role might be. And then just be patient, right? And enjoy the journey. Don't get so caught up in getting to the final destination or the conclusion, because you'll miss all of the cool things that are going to come along and the learnings that you're going to be able to take away from being in the journey and being in the moment. So that's my advice and my recommendation. I wish you guys all the best, and you guys are going to be phenomenal. So I'm already excited for you, and I'm going to congratulate you in advance.
Thanks so much. And I'll definitely be keeping that in mind as I move forward.
All right.
And thanks for joining me, and have a great day.
You too. Thank you. Bye. Take care.